What can you do to maximize your odds of staying in the US? And the first thing I tell people, even my little brother, is get a STEM degree. I made that mistake. I got a business degree, did not qualify for STEM LBT, so I only had one shot at the lottery.
Did not have a STEM degree, you had a business degree, you had one attempt. What visa did you end up moving to? How did you make it happen?
I didn't know about cap-exempt back then. It was essentially O1 for this extremely new program at the time called the IER. It's International Entrepreneurial Parole. But essentially both of these visa types are extremely common for entrepreneurs. And there was maybe like one immigration tech company or two immigration tech companies. No one really focused on modernizing immigration in the US. So started Ellis and immediately applied for the O1 and the IER.
We've come across most people who believe that they will just not qualify for it. So can you talk to us about what that would look like and how Ellis is different?
There's a lot of fake news on the internet on what qualifies and what doesn't qualify. I highly implore everyone listening to this to, if you're even considering an O1, talk to an immigration lawyer to get a full qualification on your O1 kind of profile. You know, marriage is the quickest path to a green card. And so the first question we always ask is, hey, do you happen to be in love with an American citizen? That's always the path that you should explore. And then for folks kind of going through the traditional H1B route, again, just like startups are more willing to sponsor. I'll add one more thing. Before you take any job with the company that they're going to select, do not work in their company if they don't.
Hey everyone, I'm Priya from It's Okay Yaar and welcome back to our channel. The topic for today is H1B alternatives if you did not get through the lottery. And if you're new today, It's Okay Yaar is a content platform for South Asian immigrants and we aim to educate, entertain and empower them. With us, we have today Sampei, who is the founder of a modern immigration law firm called Ellis, and they have raised $7 million to talk about this topic. Hey Sampei, how are you?
Good. Thanks for having me on, Priya.
Thank you so much for taking the time out and joining. And I know you all are doing wonderful things with your law firm. I personally know of people who've gotten approval and shared like great reviews. So I'm so excited to catch up. So let's get straight into the topic. Sampei, do you want to share some of the alternatives that people have who did not get through the H1B lottery, especially students who are on F1 visa or on OPT?
Sure. Yeah. There's a couple that come to mind. You know, one that I'm sure a ton of people have heard of is Day One CPT. So there are a ton of universities out there where you could do part-time coursework and get a master's degree. In parallel, what they will do is they will issue a Day One CPT. So instead of having to wait a year, you can get CPT on day one. Typically you can do this without approval from your employer, which is great because then they will accept, most companies will accept CPT as work authorization. That is one option that we've definitely seen a lot of folks go through. Another one is the cap-exempt H1B programs. So as far as I could tell, there are two programs that do these pretty successfully. Number one is Open Avenues, which I believe you guys have talked about here before, where they would apply for your cap-exempt H1B, your concurrent employer, second employer would then apply for your concurrent H1B visas. Effectively, you have two H1Bs, you hold two H1Bs and you can work two jobs. I'm not too familiar with what the cap-exempt job for Open Avenues is, but what I can speak to is the Parachute Project, which is the nonprofit I run on the side, apart from my daytime at Ellis. We are also a cap-exempt organization. The way we qualify for this is we have partnerships with schools like NYU, Case Western Reserve University, and Soka University. This qualifies us under USCIS mandate that we are a cap-exempt organization. What we do, we're a peer-to-peer mentorship platform. So how it would work, we would hire you as a mentor for 5 hours a week. You would mentor students at our partner universities. This is all done through our platform. So we would match you for you're a computer science major. We would match you with a computer science student. You give them guidance on how to find a job in the US. and you get paid for your work, and then your employer would sponsor your concurrent H-1B visa. It works. Both of these programs work quite similarly. The devil's in the details, as they say. So, mainly for F1 folks who are running out of OPT time, these are the two pathways we see. Priya, I don't know if you want to touch on this, but I think it's worth exploring. What can you do to maximize your odds of staying in the US? And the first thing I tell people, even my little brother, is get a STEM degree. I made that mistake. I got a business degree. Did not qualify for STEM OPT, so I only had one shot at the lottery. I was not successful in that shot, and so I had to come up with some creative hacks to stay in the US.
No, thank you for sharing. And for anyone who's watching, if you don't know much about H1B cap exempt or you don't know about day one CPT, we have a lot of content on our channel. We link that, you can watch it. But it was really interesting, Sampei, what you shared about the parachute project. I'll also link some resources around that so that people who are exploring for H1B cap exempt resources can refer. And if you watched it so far, this is not just another video on the internet which is going to give you, here are 5 things that you should be doing on H1B lottery. The idea behind creating the video is that you end up learning something specific out of it. Because as much as we can say that go for H1B cap exempt or go for an O1 visa or go for day 1 CPT, specifically you have certain questions on how to go about it. And today we will spend time with Sampei to touch it. So Sampei, you made a very interesting point that, you did not have a STEM degree, you had a business degree, you had one attempt, you have a modern immigration law firm, Ellis, you all have raised money. Talk to us a little bit about your journey. What visa did you end up moving to? How did you make it happen? Because I'm sure your journey itself is going to inspire a lot of people on what different avenues could look like.
Sure, yeah. I guess I'll start all the way from the beginning. I was born and raised in Vietnam, in Saigon. My dad's Japanese, my mom's Vietnamese. I moved to the States for college in 2017. Graduated in 2020. I worked at a startup in San Francisco called River. Helped grow that company from 4 people to 50 people by the time I left. It was valued at about $400 million by the time I left. And so, when I didn't get my H-1B lottery shot, it was, get deported or figure something out. And so I kind of scrambled the internet. I found out kind of like 2 pathways that were available to me at the time. I didn't know about cap-exempt back then. It was essentially O1, or this extremely new program at the time called the IER, or IEP. People call it different things, but it's International Entrepreneur Parole. I'll kind of go through both of these and like kind of how I made the decision. But essentially, both of these visa types are extremely common for entrepreneurs. For O1, there are 8 categories that you have to meet. There's tons of content online on this. Awards, memberships, scholarly articles, published materials, high remuneration. You essentially have to meet 3 out of 8 of these. You typically work with a lawyer at a law firm to kind of craft your case, and the petition for this is quite comprehensive, sometimes over 1,000 pages. So I knew that was a path for me. Okay, how do I prove that I'm an extraordinary individual? And I guess my path of least resistance is let's start a company. Now, you can't just spin up an LLC. You have to prove that it's a legitimate business, it's getting traction. And so, I did the wrong thing to do as an entrepreneur. I think you should start with a problem and then, work on the problem for a while, maybe at a different company or thinking about it or working on side projects and then starting a company. I think that's the right way to do it. But in my case, back was against the wall. And so I started the company and then raised $1 million with no idea. The way I was able to do this was I was an early employee of my last startup, and so I knew the investors. And then I went, okay, what problem do I solve? And kind of the one that came to mind was like the one that I'm currently facing, immigration.
And is this all happening while you're on STEM OPT? What is your visa status at this point? Are you on F1 visa? Like what? Oh, you do not have a STEM OPT. So,
No, this was this was when I was in my grace period.
oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay, go on.
Or like maybe like a week or two before my grace period.
Okay.
Um, yeah, so stressful time in my life. But essentially the overarching thesis for the company was, hey, I used to work in crypto. There's a lot of smart people going into crypto, hundreds of millions of dollars of funding being raised for those types of companies. And there was maybe like one immigration tech company or two immigration tech companies. No one really focused on, modernizing immigration in the US. So started Ellis, and immediately applied for the O1 and the IER. The IER, basically, if you're a startup founder who has raised more than, I believe, inflation adjusted now, it's like $311,000, you can apply for this parole. Now, this is not a visa. We don't typically recommend it to the founders we work with for a couple of reasons. One, adjudication times are like super random. So with O1s, you can premium process, you get a response in 15 business days. For IER, it's we'll get to it when we get to it. My personal IER application, I believe, took like a year and a half to get adjudicated. So it's not a great path for a lot of folks. But if you look at the IER statistics in 2022, there were only 8 approvals. I was one of them. So what I did was I hedged my bets. I applied for the IER and the O1 at the same time. Obviously, I got my O1 approval a lot sooner. That's how I was able to remain in the US.
Okay, now that is fascinating. And I know you mentioned extraordinary ability and all of those criteria to qualify for O1 and then the IP as well. But my question is like, when you started Ellis, and I'm sure you get a lot of like questions or applicants, what do you think are the common misunderstandings of folks around building this profile for extraordinary ability? We've come across most people who believe that they will just not qualify for it. So, can you talk to us about what that would look like and how Ellis is different?
I think everyone does it differently. I think there's a lot of fake news on the internet on what qualifies and what doesn't qualify. I highly implore everyone listening to this to, if you're even considering an O1, talk to an immigration lawyer, talk to them about your background, what you've done, if you've written in papers, to get a full qualification on your O1 kind of profile. Now, what I can say is that there are a lot of low-hanging fruit that a lot of folks can do. If you ever get asked to judge a hackathon, I highly recommend to judge a hackathon. We have a lot of folks, applying for O1s, and they're like, I asked them, like, have you judged any hackathons, or have you, judged the work of others in any capacity? And they're like, yeah, I was invited a couple times, but I just didn't want to do it. And I was like, yeah, you probably should have done that. So even knowing this beforehand is really important. I think one thing that people should also keep in mind is O1 is an employer-sponsored visa. So in theory, if you work for an employer like Microsoft, Google, in theory, they could apply you for the O1. A lot of founders use it because they could self-apply. They could start their own company and then petition themselves to do this company. But I think it's important to understand that it is an employer-sponsored visa. You can't just randomly get an O1 on the side and then be like, oh, I want to continue working for I don't know, Starbucks or something. Starbucks has to approve it, and it's their application that they file.
Got it. So, what would you say is the difference between O1 and EB1A? Because I'm sure a lot of people kind of believe that if I have one, I can qualify for the other. Would you say that's a misconception, or is that accurate in many cases?
Yeah, it's definitely a misconception. The main difference for O1 and EB1A, for O1, there's a work visa on the other side. For an EB1A, there's a green card on the other side. So kind of the level of scrutiny is higher for EB1A application. That being said, an O1 is a great stepping stone for an EB1A, right? If an officer looks at an O1, they're like, oh, okay, they meet the 3 criterion. again, they adjudicate every case differently, but it's like a good starting point. It's also a great starting point for your lawyer or whoever you work with. They already have an O1 application, but they have building an EB1A is a lot more straightforward. Now, the key difference is there's something called the final merits determination, where they look at the totality of the evidence, and the USCIS officer makes a determination where, like, is this truly an extraordinary person? And that part is storytelling. It's crafting the argument. It's painting a picture. We had a founder that we worked with. He won. He was ranked, I want to say, like 30th in the Romanian math Olympiad. And like, by the plain language of USCIS, awards category, that doesn't really fit. But we were able to weave that into the application to kind of paint him as this like child genius, which he was. But getting someone to craft that story is super important. Now, we've done a bunch of O1 CB1A upgrades for folks, so it is a great stepping stone. I'm doing this myself. I'm actually working on my own EB1A application currently, as we speak. So I'll keep you all updated on how that turns out as well.
I'm glad you brought it up because I was going to go back to your journey a little bit because you came here as a student on F1 visa in 2017. You probably had a business degree, so no STEM OPT. So you were in your grace period, but you were able to raise money because you were working for a startup that you scaled from 5 to 50. Once you raised money, you decided to open Ellis, which is a modern immigration law firm, and you got your O1 approved alongside IEP that you had applied. So currently, is it fair to assume that you are on O1 visa and you are looking to get an EB1A?
Yeah. I'm currently on O1. I'm going to be applying for my EB1A. I'm actually using my application as a dummy case internally. Again, like, we don't want to try anything creative with our clients. Like, we don't want to fully automate the case or send it to USCIS with a different way of filling out the forms, right? So I'm actually using my case as like a dummy case to kind of test a lot of the tech that we've built internally.
Interesting. And would you say, is that where the modern immigration law firm comes in? Like, I'm also just curious as we're chatting through the process, like there's so many law firms that are doing EB1A, O1, etc. How is Ellis different from the rest?
Yeah. So we built a portal for both the employers and the clients to track their comprehensive immigration history. So I'll start on the employer side. A common pain point for a lot of folks that manage large immigration programs, they want to, one, keep track of all their employees on visa statuses. They want to know when those expire. They want to know, potential travel that's coming up. Whether visas are expiring, whether passports are expiring. So we help employers manage all of that in like a clean, nice UI. For employees, they also have an employee account that's connected to the employer. So, I don't know, anyone who has worked with an immigration law firm in the past, it's like a lot of emails, a lot of emailing documents back and forth. For us, think about it like TurboTax, where you can kind of just simply fill out the application. We collect the information on it, and we digest it. We build the case. We are also working on a consumer app that will be launching later this year. It's going to be tracking your case with the USCIS. If you have a priority date, you can get estimations on when your things are going to be current. We also have a document upload feature that we're going to be including. So I don't know if you have this. I definitely have this. A lot of my friends have this, but every immigrant I know has this like clear folder that they have with all their I-20s, all their 797s. And so we're looking to replace that into, a digital modern version of it.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah. This we're going to be launching kind of to the masses. So in theory, anyone could use it. Whereas kind of the law firm portion is like, our clients are employers, we're serving their employees, etc.
No, that's pretty cool because I know it's a lot of like document processing and you're always hunting for something. So I think it's
Yeah.
definitely the need of the hour. No, that's fantastic. And I definitely want to touch on one of the alternatives. If we go back to H1B cap exempt, you mentioned the parachute project. So talk to us a little bit about for those working in academia, research, nonprofit sectors. Can you explain the concept of an H1B cap exempt and how Indian professionals may actually explore opportunities under this category?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, um, I guess I'll just start with what the H1B is, and then I'll kind of contrast that. So the H1B, there's a cap of 85,000 every year. I think this year there were about 500,000 applications. You run the numbers, but the approval rates or sorry, the acceptance rate always hovers around 20%. Um, there's a special carve out in the USCIS laws that say if you work for a cap exempt organization, which is defined pretty narrowly. One is uh, nonprofits engaged in research. Um, it's nonprofits affiliated with the university. There are essentially four categories. I don't remember them on the top of my head. But there are certain organizations that qualify under cap exemption. The most straightforward one is like if you just work at a university, like you're gonna get your H1B. There are if you work for a university full time, you are going to get an H1B.
Yes, the role doesn't matter. You could be in any role, but as long as it's a university or a research institution or something.
Well, the role does matter actually.
Okay.
One, it has to be related to your degree. There's something called the specialty occupation. Has to be related to your degree. The lawyer for the university or the cap exempt organization still has to make the argument that your job is specialized. You also have to meet the prevailing wage. So depending on where you live, you have to be paid over a certain amount.
Yeah, when I say the role doesn't matter, it means it could be in marketing, it could be in HR, it could be in like tech, it could be any of this as long as the organization is like a nonprofit or a university or a research. Of course, it needs to all get tied to the degree. So, no, thanks for explaining that. Good.
Yeah. Um, Specifically for the parachute project, we qualify under nonprofits affiliated with the university. So we look through the USCIS code properly and set up the organization in a way where it specifically qualifies for cap exemption.
Fantastic. And anyone who's watched it so far, you've learned a lot about O1 on how you can explore that. You've probably learned about H1B cap exempt. You've learned about IEP, and you've gotten some ideas from Sampei's journey on some of the next steps that you can pursue. And of course, all the work that Ellis is doing. But talk to us a little bit more, Sampei, on some of the frequent mistakes or misunderstandings that you see among professionals when they start exploring H1B alternatives. And is there any advice you would offer so that they can avoid that?
Yeah, the first advice I'd give is like start sooner. I had a lot of friends who graduated and then they're like, "Oh, I should probably start looking for jobs now," and they haven't even heard about BT before. That is a mistake. So, even for folks in college, I would implore them to start exploring this like freshman, sophomore year because they're very being an immigrant in the US is hard. Like finding a job already is like hard enough, and then finding a job that'll sponsor you is is like even harder. And then getting a meeting those two things and then also winning a lottery is like even harder, right? And so have a backup plan, start as soon as possible. Know that I have three shots at the lottery. And then just start building up your profile for, I don't know, an O1, H1B cap exam. Start engaging with those programs as soon as possible. I've even seen folks, consider, moving abroad for a couple of years to get more shots at the lottery. For folks who qualify for other visa types like TN for Canadians and Mexicans, E3s for Australians. Those are all paths that they should consider.
Fantastic. And for anyone who's feeling disheartened after the H1B lottery results, do you have any strategic advice so that they can assess their skills, networking, and explore different areas? Because you've done this fantastically. You were working at an organization, you built rapport probably with some of the investors or founders, and they probably helped you. So, do you have any advice on how to go about it?
I think, in terms of how you approach your career, you should always know that like the first hurdle is the visa. So every decision you make should be centered around that. I think a lot of people optimize for pay, which I think you definitely should, or benefits, or career trajectory. But at the end of the day, like you should be maximizing your odds of success by staying in the U.S. if that's what you want to do, right? We asked our clients this all the time, and this is a this is kind of tongue in cheek, but like it's also true. Is like marriage is the quickest path to a green card. And so the first question we always ask is, hey, do you happen to be in love with an American citizen? Right. That's always the path you should explore. And then for folks kind of going through the traditional H1B route, um, again, just like startups are more willing to sponsor. This is what I figured out. And so like I oriented my career around startups. I mean, I was lucky in that I always wanted to start a company. I was interested in that field. And so it just kind of worked out that way. But if you're able to get into a startup at the ground floor and you're critical to the team, they will sponsor you.
Got it. No, that is really fantastic.
Oh,
And
I'll add one more thing. Before you take any job, get an agreement with the company that they're going to sponsor your visa, and do not work at that company if they don't.
No, that's great. But like I think a lot of people struggle with the fact that most companies would say that after you spend a couple of years is when we would sponsor your visa. And I think that's generally a catch-22 situation for many. But I think you put it beautifully, like go for startups. Like if you are really great at your job and you're making a difference, they'll probably make it happen.
Yeah.
The last piece that I would say is for anyone looking for professional guidance or looking to partner with Ellis, what's the best way to reach, or anything that you want to share that we didn't end up covering in the video?
Yeah, I mean, if you want to work with one of our great lawyers, you can go to ellis.com. On the top right, it should say schedule a consultation. Maybe you fill out that form. We'll get back to you.
Okay, fantastic. I hope this was valuable for everyone. And what I'll do is also work with Ellis and make sure that anyone who is commenting on this video, the first 10 or 15 people, will try to make sure that you at least get a profile evaluation, because just filling a form on the website sometimes might not give you that top of the line queue. But hopefully, because we've had this conversation, Sampei, you will be able to work with some of our followers and kind of expedite some of their profile evaluation. I hope that's okay.
Yeah, happy to. I think that we have a field that says, "How did you hear about us?" We'll add this podcast on there, and then if you select that, then we'll kind of bump you up the list.
Okay, fantastic. That would be great. And for everyone who's watching, if things aren't going your way, remember it's okay, Yaar, because they will eventually turn around. Until next time, this is Priya signing off. Have a wonderful day.